everyone. My name is Lisa Karasek. I am with Brave Healer Productions. I am the community manager. And today we are doing Brave Story Time with Misty Dawn Shakti Sharma. Hey, Misty, how are you today?
I'm good, Lisa. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. This is awesome.
We are so excited to have you here. So tell us about the book, Rites and Rituals. Yeah, I have that right. I'm sorry. I thought for a moment I said the wrong book. Rites and Rituals, Harnessing the Power of Sacred Ceremony. And your chapter,
Yes.
Tell us your chapter.
Yeah, sure. So my chapter is chapter 19, The Journey Within, Awakening Your Own Spiritual Divinity. And, basically I wanted to say a few things. I was thinking about this. Our main author was Dr. Ariana Platten. So I got to shout her out and say thank you to her and to you and to Laura and Brave Healers Productions, because this is my first time being part of a collaborative book. And I think it's something very special, that I'll remember forever. And Dr. Ariana had a really great intention, right, of wanting to put together a guidebook, if you will, a source for people to be able to use and get exposure to ritual and how to use that in their lives, maybe how to teach it to others, for all kinds of different denominations and people across, all walks of life. And so I think that what's interesting is I had an intention at that time to expand and find, like-minded authors and new experiences to kind of push my writing a little bit. I had only written poetry really up until that point. I had only published poetry. And so this was my first writing project to really sit down and actually write, a chapter and tell a little bit of memoir really about my life and, rites and rituals and how powerful they had been for me. So my chapter really looks at a time in my life where I had just gotten through survival mode. I had gone through a divorce. I had two small children who were finally in school. I had finally finished nursing school, and it was like I could take a deep breath. And what I found in that sacred breath was that, it was time for healing for myself. And so my chapter talks about going to the Institute of Mental Physics in Joshua Tree, where I learned the 8 key breaths of Ding Lamay. And Ding Lamay, I got to shout him out too, even though he's been gone from this dimension for a while. But he, was a journalist, awesome man who studied in Tibet and learned some of the ancient breath work and brought that over to California, first in LA and now in Joshua Tree, where the Institute of Mental Physics is. And so I have quite a few different rituals in this book. But one of the main was going to that institute for a year and doing meditation and breath work. And so I talk a lot in my chapter about, it doesn't have to be a big, huge, ritual that you're doing. It can sometimes be the small moments that are very powerful. And so for me, in that breath work and in that slowing down of going internally, I was able to go through a really big transformation and spiritual awakening. And so I knew when I joined this project that, man, I want to capture that somehow. I want to write about, what that experience felt like, because it was very mystical and it was very, it was big and it felt transformational, and I'm still on the journey now. And so this chapter is going through the old journals I had, thinking about those moments where I learned to kind of meditate and slow down and breathe, feeling like I'm going to pass out because I'm so high on all the breath work we're doing and like the changes I had in my body and just so many different things. And then ultimately the channel opening up with spirit divine and recognizing myself as a divine child as well. So that's really what the chapter is trying to encompass, is that point in time where I was going through this.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, are you ready to read?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Go ahead.
All right. Take my little sip of water. So reading from Rites and Rituals, Harnessing the Power of Sacred Ceremony. And my chapter 19, The Journey Within, Awakening Your Own Spiritual Divinity. And my chapter opens with a quote from Dean LeMay. Almighty and eternal fount of wisdom, grant us knowledge, understanding, and wisdom to speak here words of truth, love, and hope. May those who are now in darkness and obscurity be brought into the radiant sunshine and the joyous glory of the unfoldment of true spiritual goodness. My story. I was flying. Well, that is what it felt like. I wasn't in my body. I was pure energy moving. I saw grass and the sky as I flew. Flying is the only word I can think of, though it felt much slower. I felt like I was existence in slow motion, and I was seeing how life began. Not only how it began, but also what it felt like to be pure life. I was the wind, and then I was the spider spinning a web. All at once, I came back into awareness and felt myself sitting on the warm plush carpet. I was in Joshua Tree, California, at the Institute of Mental Physics, and my teacher had just led us through the 8 key breaths of Ding May. The little building we were in was named the Lotus Meditation Building, and it had become my sanctuary, my church. I slowly opened my eyes. I don't want to come back, I thought. It felt so good to be free from my body, from my attachments, and to be pure energy form. I recognized that the meditation I had just experienced showed me visually and through the movement of energy that there is divinity in everything, the wind, the spider, and her web. I felt I was now seeing the world through awakened eyes. Out of destruction comes rebirth. Finally, it's over. My divorce was finalized, and I felt free. I felt like I was breathing again. I didn't realize how much my energy was being sucked from me. I felt alive in a new way that is hard to describe. Not only had this toxic relationship been laid to rest, but I had also graduated from nursing school, and after 6 years, I could finally breathe. I looked around the tiny trailer I was living in with my children, grateful for its protection, but wanting to manifest a home with more windows and brightness. I remember when it struck me, and I realized that my life was a direct manifestation of my thoughts and the main vibrations I carry. At the time, it was a painful realization, not because there wasn't any good, but because there was so much not serving me. I decided at that moment that I'd do my best to create a life that was a reflection of my soul and spirit, not just to survive, but to thrive. I'll begin again right now, I silently prayed. The house I manifested has 3 bedrooms and an extra room to do yoga, I thought. It is bright and cheery with yellow painted walls and many windows that let in the light. I fell to my knees in gratitude and bowed my head as a river of tears fell, the kind of tears that feel so good when they come. It took so much work and sacrifice to get to this moment. I thought back to the young 17-year-old me who found herself carrying life, and I remember a moment when I was watching an educational program about pregnancy, and I was crying. My son kicked me at that precise moment, as if saying, "I'm here, Mom. Don't cry. You are not alone." And as I stretched out on my yoga mat in the bright yellow room in my new house, I entered into the cobra pose and felt the most delicious vibrations throughout my body. Ah, I moaned with the pleasure and intensity of it all, stretching and feeling my spirit within my beautiful body like never before. I made friends with my body in a new and sacred way. If I reflect, I've always been a deep thinker, a spiritual person. I had a longing to understand and a yearning for the mysteries to be revealed. I don't know that I've had full consciousness of this, The transition from a teenager to an adult occurred quickly for me. And so I began a journey to make something of myself, to survive, but also ultimately to thrive. The need to survive and keep going can be compared to contractions as one labors. There is a moment in life when you're deep within yourself. It's you in the rawness of life. As my spirit awakened, I felt like I had arrived, birthing a new consciousness. I was the fruit ripening for the spiritual experiences that would touch me to my core and shape the rest of my life. After survival mode comes rest. There was a point after so much struggle where, for the first time after becoming a young mother, I had enough finances and enough time to begin to look at filling up my own spiritual cup. My two sons were in elementary school, and I utilized that time to explore. I was looking outside of myself for healing. I was always an open person who enjoyed different cultures, and this would be helpful to me as I journeyed deeper than I thought possible. Staying open is not just a suggestion, but can be a way of life. I believe my education as a nurse helped ripen me for further expansion with spirit because it taught me to be open-minded. It started simple and small. When we think of awakening or rites and rituals, sometimes we think it needs to be this large moment, a comet of awareness. But if I trace it back, I see it's a small moment where I took myself out to explore. It felt like I was going outward, but really what I did was go inward. I was opening after so long. I learned recently that my favorite tree, the mimosa tree, has leaves that close in response to being touched due to sensitivity. And I felt this way too. But now I was opening to the touch of the divine. On an ordinary Tuesday, I went to a cafe in Joshua Tree with my new book. This is the piece I'm missing, I thought, as I drank my green juice. This feels so good. I learned to take care of myself and learned to recognize I'm a soul. It sounds simple and small, but for someone who went through many years of adversity, struggle, and survival, it was huge. I still remember this day. 7 years later, I can still climb into the memory. There was a flow I experienced. Some might call this divine orchestration or divine flow, synchronicity, manifestation. I didn't know any of these terms then. I only knew it felt so good. On this day, I flowed. I went to different places around my community and allowed myself to show up as my authentic, sensitive, wandering soul. I wandered without an agenda. I was open to the good and the possible. And on this most auspicious day, I found out about a class at the Institute of Mental Physics in Joshua Tree. I had driven by the Institute my whole life and always been intrigued, but never had I inquired. And for some reason, I now recognize as fate. It felt like the right time. And I found a class, the 8 Key Breaths of Ding May, Tuesday evenings from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. I wrote it down in my small notebook, and I went to that class for the first time expecting nothing, not knowing that my life would change. I was catapulted into the biggest spiritual awakening of my life. I journeyed through Kundalini awakening, self-discovery, and I became a more complete version of my highest self. The sacredness of breath at the Lotus Meditation Building. I came to the Institute of Mental Physics, a massive property located in Joshua Tree, California, in the Southern California Mojave Desert. I lived only a short distance away in 29 Palms. You can make out parts of the property from the road, trees peeking out like parts of a mystery exposed. I felt scared and awkward, jumpy and anxious. I'm scared I will get lost and won't know my way, I thought. I'd felt like this a lot lately. I went to the main office and received directions to the Lotus Meditation Building. And in the main courtyard, there was a golden statue of Buddha. He seemed so light, so free, smiling with the answers to secrets. There was a bell above his head. I wonder what it'd be like to ring that bell loudly for all to hear. But instead, I make my way to a small courtyard with water. I was still nervous, waiting for the teacher to come. There were a few people in the courtyard with me. The teacher arrived and I introduced myself. "Hi, I'm Misty," I said. "I'm here for the class." My teacher looked at me with eyes that seemed to pierce through all my defenses and peer directly into my soul. My teacher was my first encounter with a spiritual man who knew himself and seemed to have complete sovereignty of his being. And though we had just met, our souls knew this was not the first time. We entered the Lotus Meditation Building, a small building with lush purple velvet carpets and 3 triangles forming windows. I chose to sit directly on the floor, not knowing then how much I needed grounding. My teacher walked us through the 8 key breaths of Ding Lame, and this was the first time in my life I was consciously aware of my sacred breath. I never focused on my breath. My teacher's voice was calming, grounding, and strong, exactly the energy I needed to be around. It gave me the support and courage to keep breathing. I was 25 years old, and this was the first time, besides a yoga class I took in college, where I meditated, stopped, and sat with myself with no agenda or no to-do list. Going from small, wimpy breaths to inhaling deep gulps of air is a high, and it can make you feel all powerful, and it can also drop you to your knees, making you feel faint. Most of us do not breathe deeply, but rather live on shallow breaths. My teacher said, "I want you to recognize there is an innate spirit inside you, an intelligent life force that keeps you breathing. This breath is sacred." As a nurse, I understood how the respiratory system works and how complex the human body is, but I found myself thinking, wow, it's my spirit that keeps me breathing. After class, I stayed and talked with my teacher, and he discussed astrology. I remember listening to him intently, my whole being recognizing this moment before my mind or my consciousness ever would. I remember time fading and the structures of objects around me fading too. I experienced an alchemical moment where spirit is raw and pure. It was a destiny-filled moment. I arrived at this moment, and even though a short while ago I was afraid, I no longer was. To say that this class changed my life is no understatement. To say it saved my life is a fact. To say it helped awaken my soul would be the truth. Sometimes rites and rituals look big, a fire ceremony, being baptized in water. But for me, it happened in the slow and steady breath, in the slowing down, in the ritual of coming to the Institute every Tuesday for a year to breathe. By learning to breathe, I experienced so much energy and learned about prana, our essential life force. As the breath began to balance my body, mind, and soul, I was led to other gifts. By remaining open to the journey, I experienced many miracles. This was not a scientific awakening. As a nurse, I knew what good oxygenation does for a body, but I awakened to the part of me the world suppressed and that I also had pushed down and away. I awakened to my soul. Things began to flow through me through intuition and meditation. For example, I was raised Christian and never heard about the Hindu god Shiva or goddess Shakti. Through these breaths, I learned that Lord Shiva represents the divine masculine, consciousness, and Shakti represents the divine feminine and raw energy. An energy without consciousness spins idly, and consciousness without energy to experience it sits idly. It's the balance of both masculine and feminine energy carried in us that helps us live a more balanced life. Once I experienced this divine flow of intuitive information, it became easier to allow myself to be open to the divine and explore information that came through. You may call this channeling or prayer. Many names work. As I allowed myself to flow with the divine, I recognized I was diving deep into the mysteries of the universe. The mysteries that used to scare me now intrigue me. I'm still flowing with this ritual of intuitive downloading and tapping into the divine. My mindset has switched from the universe is a scary, fearful place to my new mantra, the universe surprises me with its mysteries. Rites and rituals may not always be something big, but rather something small that is begging to be explored and borne witness to. How often does a soft moment come as a reminder that worlds are birthed from breath? Do not underestimate the power of beginning, exploring, or of taking that first step and trying something. As I became more awakened, I became deeply aware of the moon's presence in my life. It was as if I was seeing her for the first time, though I knew I was seeing her through newly awakened eyes and consciousness. One of the things I learned about was working with the moon, manifestation and healing. I learned you could release by the full moon and manifest by planting seeds on the moon. And one of the ways you can do this is by writing. As a young girl, I loved Shakespeare and used to write songs and poems. And at some point in my life, I stopped. During this awakening, I started writing again, a thought, sentence, or a page to express what I was experiencing. I began to write again by the moon. The ritual of following the full moon and new moon became a comfort to me. I wrote in a certain style. When releasing by the full moon, I started by writing the words, I release what no longer serves me and the highest good for myself. And during this time, I would reflect on whatever was no longer serving my highest good. This could be an attachment, thought, or experience, but it was powerful to name it. And writing it down on paper made it more concrete. After writing it, you rip it into pieces or burn it, whatever works for you. By the new moon, I had a chance to create and manifest. I had nothing to lose by trying this, and so I wrote as if the thing I was asking for was already occurring. I manifested many things, big and small, this way, and it changed my way of thinking. I went to a local art show and saw a vase with Shiva doing the Tandiva, the dance of destruction and creation. In a sense, my awakening was the unraveling, or destruction, if you will, of what no longer served me. My awakening was also the rebirth of my soul. This Shiva jar became my manifestation jar before I knew what a manifestation jar was. I began to hold my new moon manifestations within this Shiva jar. The ceremony. Create your own manifestation jar. Look for an object that means something to you and you can store your notes in. It should be something that is of your own energy and something that inspires you and brings you peace and joy. Look up the date of the next full moon and reflect on what you would like to release. Think about what is no longer serving. What would it be like to release the heaviness of what you're carrying? Write it down. Once written, rip it, shred it, or burn it, but do let it go, let it flow, and allow it to heal. Take a breath, exhale, releasing what no longer serves you. At the new moon, write down the seeds you do want to plant. What do you want to nourish in your life? What do you want to come to fruition? Keep this in your manifestation jar. Take a new breath. Now that you have completed the ritual, the rite is faith and being the vibrational match to what you want to plant. Do you believe in what you're doing? Are you connected to it? Can you hold space and faith for it to grow? Anyone who has ever grown something from a seed to a plant knows it's something sacred. Allowing yourself the time and space to grow will allow you to nourish that sacredness, all while you remember the sacredness of your breath and of your soul. And as you start to experience your manifestations, do, from time to time, take out your notes from your manifestation jar to read. Become aware of your journey and foster gratitude for the divine that helps nourish your manifestations. Gratitude is the key to manifesting, and do sit with yourself and breathe. feeling your divine soul resting in your being. And that's the end of the chapter. And I did just want to say that, you know, Ariana's intention was that we share a tool, a ceremony that people could use in their real life. And so this book is just filled with all kinds of wonderful rituals from all the different authors and different things that they've found very powerful in their life. And I do have my Shiva jar here that I still write down and store my manifestations or things that I, you know, want to manifest and hear, things I'm thankful for. So
That's a beautiful jar.
isn't it? I found this at a local art show and I'm like, at the time I had just found out about him and I'm like, this is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so much. How did that feel to read that out loud?
You know, I've read it out loud to myself, but that's the first time like getting to read it out, you know, with maybe more people having the opportunity to hear it. And I feel grateful to be able to reflect back to that moment. And I hope, you know, when people hear that, that maybe it's, you know, what they need to allow themselves to just explore or go or try something new, flow, you know, and also recognize, you know, their own spiritual divinity. And that's kind of why I named the chapter that as well, because I want people to recognize that they're divine.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there any last thing that you want to say to your listeners and audience?
Just thank you so much. Thank you for anyone who's tuning in. I'm very thankful to Brave Healers Publishing, Ariana, Lisa, you for hosting me today and all your support pre-recording.
You're very welcome.
And it's just been a positive experience. And you know, I do want to promote if anybody's, you know, wants to get exposure to writing, wants a chance to share something that's been powerful for them. You know, I think this is a cool, Brave Healers is a cool place to go to be collaborative with people. And it definitely also pushed my learning with writing, having deadlines and, you know, having support though, and in different ways of writing, you know, how you start a story, how you end a story. And so I think it's been a really cool experience. So I just want to kind of shout that out as well for anybody considering it. You won't regret it, you know?
Definitely not. Oh, good point. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing that. Yeah, it really is quite an experience.
it is.
So,
Yeah, you'll come out, you know, knowing more than you did for sure.
mhm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Misty. And
Thank
we look
you.
forward to hearing more from you, hopefully.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. Take care.
Thank you.